The galaxy had asked for heroes. What it received instead was humanity. The world of Illyria was dying. From orbit, the planet looked wounded. Entire continents burned under a storm of metallic creatures that moved like a living tide. Cities that once shimmered with light were now dark scars across the surface. The Devourer swarm did not conquer. It erased. High Sovereign Kayles stood inside the Grand Prism Chamber, watching the destruction through a wall of living crystal. Her people were beings of light and structure, their bodies formed from lattices of radiant mineral. For 10,000 years, they had known peace. Now peace was a memory. "They have breached the Eastern Hemisphere," said Commander Vila. His crystalline form flickered with stress fractures. "Our final defense lines collapsed 2 hours ago." Kayles did not answer at first. She watched as one of Illyria's sky spires was swallowed whole. The swarm consumed matter at an impossible rate. Stone, metal, energy, nothing slowed them. The Illyrians had tried diplomacy. The swarm answered with silence. They tried weapons. The swarm adapted. They tried retreat. The swarm followed. Now there was only one option left. "The beacon," Kayles said quietly. The chamber fell silent. The beacon of summoning had not been activated in 4,000 cycles. Ancient texts claimed it could reach across the stars and call forth saviors, champions from distant civilizations who would answer a cry for help. It required sacrifice. 3 sacred energy cores that sustained Illyria's climate would have to be drained completely. Without them, the planet would begin to die even if the swarm was defeated. Vila hesitated. And if no one answers? Kayles turned toward the massive crystalline structure at the center of the chamber. It pulsed faintly, dormant but waiting. "Then at least we will not fall quietly." The ritual began. Energy flowed like rivers of light into the beacon's core. The sacred energy wells dimmed one by one, their brilliance fading into darkness. Kayles felt the planet tremble beneath her feet. Then the beacon exploded with white radiance. A signal screamed across the galaxy, searching for noble hearts, brave souls, defenders of the innocent. It did not understand nuance. It searched for intensity, for relentless will, for minds that refused surrender. And it found Earth. Not in palaces, not in temples, but in chaos. Captain Marcus Hale was in the middle of a disaster zone when the signal touched him. An earthquake had shattered half a coastal city in Chile. Buildings lay collapsed like broken toys. Marcus led a rapid response engineering team specialized in structural collapse. He stood over a cracked support column, calculating load distribution in seconds. Beneath the rubble, 32 civilians were trapped. "Give me hydraulic spreaders and 3 braces," he shouted. He did not panic. He did not freeze. He adapted. The beacon felt his mind burning with problem-solving fury. He would not allow gravity to win. He vanished in white light. In Germany, Dr. Amora Iqbal stared at a laboratory screen filled with alien math, complex models predicting climate collapse on Earth within 50 years. Governments argued. Funding was cut. She worked anyway. Her team had built a prototype atmospheric stabilizer that could reverse carbon density in microzones. Most scientists called it impossible. She called it unfinished. When the beacon reached her, it felt defiance against inevitability. She refused extinction. She vanished. In Kenya, firefighter Daniel Okoye drove directly into a wildfire others were fleeing. A school bus had stalled on a mountain road, flames closing in from both sides. He did not slow down. He accelerated. The beacon felt courage mixed with tactical instinct. He calculated wind direction, fuel load, escape vectors. He was not reckless. He was decisive. He vanished mid-step. In Japan, robotics engineer Aiko Tanaka worked alone in her workshop at 3 a.m. Her project, autonomous rescue drones designed to navigate environments too dangerous for humans. The prototype kept failing. She kept improving it. Failure was data. When the beacon scanned her mind, it felt relentless iteration. Adaptation. She vanished. In Canada, former Special Forces operative Elias Ward trained survival teams in Arctic conditions. He believed preparation was mercy. He had seen what chaos did to unprepared populations. He believed in readiness. The beacon sensed strategic thinking layered with cold efficiency. He vanished. 5 humans disappeared from Earth within the same heartbeat. They reappeared in the grand prism chamber. Kayleigh stared at them. They did not glow. They did not shine. They looked confused. Marcus immediately scanned the room for structural weaknesses. Amora studied the architecture with scientific fascination. Daniel assessed exits and possible threats. Aiko examined the beacon's energy residue patterns. Elias remained silent, observing everyone, including his fellow humans. Kayleigh approached carefully. "You have answered our call," she said. "You are the champions of your world." Marcus raised an eyebrow. With respect, what world is this?" Behind the crystal walls, the swarm became visible for the first time to human eyes. A black horizon moving. Consuming. Elias stepped closer to the glass. "How many?" he asked calmly. "Billions," Vila answered. Daniel whistled softly. Amora folded her arms. "And your strategy so far?" "We fought with honor." Elias gave a slow nod. "That was your first mistake." Kayleigh blinked. "You are heroes," she insisted. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "We're problem solvers." The swarm struck the outer defense ring. The chamber trembled. Kayleigh felt fear rise again. "We asked for saviors," she whispered. Elias looked at the approaching darkness with cold calculation. "You didn't get saviors." Daniel tightened his gloves. Aiko smiled faintly. Amora's eyes sharpened. Marcus cracked his neck and studied the architecture. "You got humans." And humans had never survived by being noble. They survived by being worse. The devourer swarm hit Illyria's outer shield like an ocean smashing a glass wall. The crystal barrier held, for now, but it screamed with strain, sending sharp vibrations through the grand prism chamber. Outside, the sky boiled orange and black as billions of metal-shelled bodies climbed over each other, tearing down anything that remained. Kayleigh watched the 5 humans with growing disbelief. They were not praying. They were not chanting. They were not asking for blessings. They were planning. Marcus Hale walked to the nearest support pillar and tapped it like a construction foreman inspecting a weak foundation. "Your chamber's load-bearing design is gorgeous," he said, almost annoyed. "But you've got a resonance problem. That impact frequency will crack your supports in, maybe an hour if it keeps up." Commander Vila blinked. "How can you know that so quickly?" Marcus pointed at a fine fracture line spreading like a spiderweb. "Because physics doesn't care about beauty." Amora Iqbal stepped closer to the crystal wall, her eyes tracking the movement of the swarm like she was watching a lab specimen. "They're not just attacking randomly," she said. "Look. That cluster is forming a wedge. They're testing your barrier. They're learning." Aiko Tanaka knelt beside a shattered piece of crystal machinery ripped from the beacon's base. Her fingers moved fast, her voice calm. "Your systems are modular. That's good. That means we can rewire. But your interface logic is ceremonial." Kayleigh bristled. "It is sacred." Aiko didn't look up. "Sacred is fine. Slow is not." Daniel Okoye peered at the chamber's air vents. "Do they breathe?" he asked. "They do not," Vila replied carefully. Daniel nodded. "Good. Fire doesn't care if you breathe." Elias Ward remained the quiet center of the storm, eyes moving between the humans and the Illyrians. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady. "You called us because you're losing. So stop acting like we're guests. We need a workspace, access to your sensors, and permission to break whatever needs breaking." Kayleigh hesitated. Every instinct told her to protect the sanctity of the temple. Every instinct also screamed that her people were minutes from extinction. "Granted," she said. Her voice trembled once, then hardened. "Do whatever you must." Marcus exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Okay," he said. "First rule, We don't fight an enemy we don't understand. Vila gestured, and a cluster of floating crystal panels unfolded in the air. Holographic images formed, battle recordings, scans, energy readings. The swarm appeared in brutal clarity, insect-like bodies with metallic plating, too many legs, mouths like grinding saws, and strange internal heat signatures that pulsed when they fed. Amora's eyes narrowed. "That's not a biology problem," she murmured. "That's an energy conversion engine." Aiko leaned in. "Show me their electromagnetic profile." Vila adjusted the display. A storm of wavelengths appeared, static noise layered with sharp peaks. Aiko stared. Then she smiled, just a little, the way someone smiles when a lock finally clicks open. "They're talking," she said. Kaylee's frowned. "The swarm does not communicate." "They don't communicate like you," Aiko replied. "They broadcast coordination pulses. Like a hive network. Like drones." Elias stepped closer. "Meaning if we disrupt the network." "They lose coordination," Aiko finished. Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we don't need to kill billions," he said. "We need to make them stupid." Another impact shook the chamber. A section of the outer shield flared bright, then dimmed. "Time," Daniel said quietly. Marcus pointed to a structural diagram. "How deep is this temple?" "Beneath the capital," Kaylee's answered. 5 levels below the surface. Marcus's face tightened. "If the surface collapses, you get buried. We need to reinforce or evacuate." Kaylee's looked away. "Evacuation is no longer possible." Elias caught that phrase. "No ships." "Our fleet is gone," Vila admitted. "Consumed. Every attempt to leave fails." Elias absorbed it without emotion. Then he nodded. "Then we hold here and turn your world into a trap." Kaylee's stared at him. "A trap, for the swarm." Elias looked at the recordings again. "They eat everything. So we give them something they can't digest." Amora stepped back from the holograms, her mind racing. "They convert matter into usable energy," she said. "But conversion has limits. Every engine has a threshold. If we feed them the wrong input, something unstable, we overload them." Vila tilted his head. "You mean poison?" Amora nodded. "Yes. But a poison big enough to reach the whole hive." Daniel's voice grew sharp. "How do you deliver poison to a monster that eats planets?" Aiko raised her hand slightly. "Through their own mouths." She pulled up the swarm's feeding footage frame by frame. The devourers tore through crystal buildings, but whenever they hit Illyrian power conduits, the bright veins that carried energy through the city, their bodies glowed harder. They didn't just eat the crystal. They hunted the energy. Amora tapped the display. "They prefer concentrated power sources." Kaylee's swallowed. "Our sacred wells." Marcus looked at her. "Those wells are dead already. But your infrastructure still carries energy. And you still have one thing they'll go for." He pointed at the ancient beacon. Kaylee's core chilled. "No." Elias's eyes didn't soften. "Yes." "The beacon is the heart of our world's oldest temple," Kaylee said, voice rising. "It is our last hope." Elias answered simply, "It already did its job. It brought us." Daniel stepped closer to Kaylee's, not unkind but firm. "If we keep treating that thing like a holy statue, you'll all be dead by morning." Aiko's fingers danced over the controls. "The beacon's output is massive. It broadcasts across the galaxy. That means it can generate interference strong enough to jam the swarm network." Kaylee stared. "You want to turn our sacred artifact into a weapon." Marcus corrected her. "We want to turn it into a tool." Amora added, softer, "If we jam them and poison them at the same time, we don't need to win a fair fight. We win an unfair one." Kaylee's looked through the wall again at the swarm climbing higher, chewing into the last defense towers. She thought of the nursery chambers, the children still in their crystal growth pods, unaware of death closing in. Her voice cracked. What do you need? Marcus exhaled. Everything you can give us. Power, access, materials, and space to work. Vila hesitated. If you overload the beacon, it could fracture the temple. Marcus shrugged. Then we reinforce the temple. Daniel gave a short laugh. That's your job, engineer. Marcus grinned despite the nightmare outside. Yeah, it is. They moved like a machine together, 5 humans forged in different disasters, now aligned under one purpose. Vila called for Illyrian technicians. Crystal beings arrived with tool extensions grown from their arms, bringing glowing materials and floating platforms. The chamber turned from holy silence into a frantic workshop. Marcus mapped stress points and ordered reinforcement struts built out of crystal alloy. He treated sacred architecture like a bridge that had to survive a hurricane. Illyrian builders watched, stunned, as he solved in minutes what would have taken them days. Amora rewired power flow charts and demanded real-time sensor data. She refused to accept unknown as an answer. When an Illyrian scientist said, "Our instruments cannot read that," she replied, "then build new ones," like it was the simplest thing in the universe. Aiko patched into the beacon's core logic, translating its ancient symbol language into working code. She found patterns beneath the ritual design, old failsafes, hidden frequencies, half-forgotten capabilities. She smiled wider as the system began to respond. Daniel studied the city's air movement and thermal shifts. He asked for maps, fuel densities, atmospheric composition. He wasn't thinking about honor. He was thinking about how to make a planet burn in the right direction without killing the people inside it. Elias watched them all and built the plan into a single shape. He assigned roles, set timelines, and made the worst choices without blinking. Then he turned to Kayleigh. "You summoned us as heroes," he said. "But you don't need heroes. You need survivors." Kayleigh forced herself to hold his gaze. What are humans, if not heroes? Elias looked toward the swarm, eyes cold as polar night. "We're the species that learned the universe doesn't care. So we make it care." Outside, the shield flared again, this time with a sharp crack. A fracture ran across the barrier like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. Vila's voice shook. "The shield will fail within 30 minutes. Aiko's hands kept moving. "I can jam their network," she said. "But I need a clean pulse window." Amora pointed. "And I need a delivery system for the overload." Daniel looked at the ventilation systems. "We can make a delivery system." Marcus tightened the final reinforcement braces. "And we can keep the temple standing." Elias nodded once. "Then we do it now." Kayleigh whispered, almost to herself, "We asked for saviors." Aiko glanced up, eyes bright with focus. And Earth sent something far worse. The beacon's core began to glow again, but this time, it did not feel like prayer. It felt like a countdown. Just as the swarm reached the final defense ring and opened its jaws to swallow the temple itself, Aiko slammed the final command into the beacon's heart. The crystal symbol lines ignited. A soundless wave rippled outward. And across the battlefield, billions of devourers paused, mid-step, like puppets whose strings had been cut. For the first time since the nightmare began, the swarm hesitated. And that was the opening humans needed. For 3 full seconds, the devourer swarm stood still. Across the burning horizon, billions of metallic bodies froze mid-motion. Claws stopped inches from crystal walls. Massive siege creatures halted with their grinding maws open. The orange glow dimmed slightly as the coordinated pulses that guided them flickered into chaos. Inside the grand prism chamber, every Illyrian stopped breathing. Aiko's hands hovered over the beacon controls. "Network disruption holding," she said, calm but focused. "They've lost synchronization." Amora leaned toward the sensor display. Energy spikes dropping. Without coordination, their efficiency collapses. Elias did not celebrate. He stepped closer to the crystal wall and watched carefully. "How long?" Aiko swallowed. "Maybe 90 seconds before they reroute signals." Daniel cracked his neck. "Then we make those 90 seconds count. Marcus slammed his palm against the structural interface. Reinforcements stable. Temple won't collapse from feedback. You've got your shot. Elias turned to Kaylee's. Authorize full power transfer from every remaining grid on the planet into the beacon. Vila's light flickered in horror. That will black out the capital. It's already burning, Elias said evenly. Kaylee's hesitated for only a heartbeat this time. Do it. Across Illyria, power lines flared like veins of white lightning. Entire districts went dark as their energy surged toward the ancient temple. The beacon, once a sacred relic, now hummed like a weapon waking from a long sleep. Amora's voice sharpened. Inject unstable energy harmonics into the output. Make it messy. Make it impossible to convert cleanly. Aiko adjusted frequencies rapidly. They like structured input. So we give them chaos. Daniel stepped beside Marcus. Vent system primed. Marcus nodded. When they rush the temple, they'll breach through the lower intake shafts. That's where we feed them. Kaylee stared. Feed them, what? Amora did not look away from the monitors. A reaction cascade. The swarm began to twitch. Across the battlefield, smaller units started moving again, but not together. Some collided with each other. Others attacked the wrong targets. Massive creatures stumbled as their command pulses overlapped and clashed. Elias smiled faintly. Confuse the predator, he said. Then poison it. Aiko hit the final sequence. The beacon erupted, not in a focused beam like before, but in a pulsing storm of distorted energy waves. The signal slammed into the swarm's network like static drowning out a radio broadcast. On the horizon, entire clusters of devourers began attacking each other. Their coordination shattered. Kaylee's gasped. They are fighting themselves. Exactly, Daniel muttered. But the largest forms, the command nodes, began to glow brighter. They were adapting. Amora saw it instantly. They're isolating corrupted units. Hive core compensating. Elias nodded once. Then we escalate. Marcus triggered the lower chamber gates. Beneath the temple, massive intake tunnels opened, pathways the swarm had already begun chewing toward. Now, they were wide open. The largest devourers surged forward, instinctively drawn toward the beacon's enormous energy signature. Here they come, Daniel said. The first of the giants burst through the outer wall, a towering mass of metal plates and serrated limbs. It slammed into the lower intake shaft and began devouring everything in its path. Now! Amora shouted. Aiko reversed the energy flow. Instead of clean power, the beacon sent an unstable cascade directly into the intake shafts, raw, fluctuating harmonics designed to overload conversion systems. The devourer giant glowed violently. For a split second, it seemed stronger. Then its internal core flashed white. And it detonated. The explosion ripped upward through the swarm ranks like a shockwave. Nearby units feeding on the same corrupted energy began to convulse. Amora's voice trembled with awe. Their conversion engines can't process chaotic frequencies. It's too unstable. It's poison, Elias finished. More giants rushed in, driven by instinct to consume the massive energy source. Each one swallowed the corrupted cascade. Each one exploded. Outside the temple, chain reactions spread through the swarm. Units that had consumed fragments of the overloaded giants began to destabilize. Some melted from within. Others tore themselves apart. The sky, once orange and choking, flickered with white flashes. Vila stared in disbelief. We could not even scratch them. Marcus exhaled slowly. You were trying to overpower them. Daniel watched another Titan detonate. We're just making them eat themselves. But the battle was not over. Far above the battlefield, something massive began descending from orbit. Amora's eyes widened. That's new. Through the crystal wall, they saw it, a colossal entity, larger than any before. A central hive core. Its body pulsed with controlled energy, far more stable than the others. Elias's jaw tightened. That's the brain. The smaller devourers began moving again, this time forming defensive patterns around the descending core. Aiko's fingers flew across the beacon interface. It's shielding itself from interference. Amora's voice dropped. It learned. Kaylee's felt despair clawing back into her core. Then, this is not enough. Elias turned toward her. No, he said calmly. It's exactly enough. Marcus looked at him. You have something else in mind. Elias nodded. We stop playing defense. He faced Aiko. Can the beacon amplify outward instead of inward? She hesitated. If we invert the lattice alignment, maybe, but it would burn out the core permanently. Kaylee's did not hesitate this time. Do it. Amora understood instantly. We're not poisoning the soldiers anymore, she whispered. Daniel grinned grimly. We're feeding it to the king. The hive core descended lower, towering over the battlefield like a mechanical god. Its surface shimmered with defensive shielding. Elias spoke quietly. It thinks it's superior. Centralized. Perfect. Marcus cracked his knuckles. Nothing centralized is perfect. Aiko flipped the inversion sequence. The beacon roared. Instead of chaotic pulses scattered across the field, all remaining energy condensed into one violent surge, amplified, unstable, catastrophic. The hive core opened its feeding ports. It consumed the surge. For one heartbeat, the entire battlefield went silent. The hive core glowed brighter than a star. Then fractures spread across its metallic shell like cracks across ice. Amora whispered, "Conversion overload." The hive core tried to compensate. Energy flared outward in uncontrolled arcs. Smaller devourers nearby ignited from feedback loops. Elias did not look away. "Come on," he murmured. The core split in half. And the sky exploded. A shockwave rippled across Illyria's atmosphere. The remaining swarm units dropped lifeless, their network severed permanently. Silence fell over the burning world. The orange glow faded. Smoke drifted upward into a sky that slowly turned blue again. Inside the temple, the beacon dimmed, its core cracked and dark. Aiko leaned back, exhausted. That's it. It's dead. Marcus checked structural readings. Temples still standing. Daniel looked toward the horizon. Fires dying down. Amora stared at the empty sky. They adapted. They learned. And we still beat them. Kaylee stepped forward slowly, her luminous form reflecting the new dawn outside. You destroyed them, she whispered. In hours. We fought for years. Elias shook his head. You fought to win cleanly. Marcus added, we fought to survive. Vila looked at the 5 humans differently now, not as saviors glowing with purity, but as something far more complicated. You are terrifying, he said softly. Daniel laughed once. You should see us on a bad day. Kaylee's bowed her head, not in worship, but in understanding. We asked for heroes, she said. Amora met her gaze gently. Heroes are stories. Survivors are real. Aiko looked at the broken beacon. You wanted noble warriors. Elias turned toward the rising sun. You got a species that survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and its own mistakes, he said. We don't win because we're stronger. Marcus finished it. We win because we learn faster. Across Illyria, crystal towers stood damaged but alive. Nursery gardens still glowed faintly. The devourer swarm was nothing more than silent debris scattered across continents. The galaxy had asked for saviors. But Earth had sent something else. A species that could turn prayer into a weapon. A species that studied monsters. And became worse. And somewhere, deep in space, faint signals began whispering again. Other civilizations watching what had happened. Learning. Wondering. If humanity could do this for strangers, what would it do for itself?